Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hack Check podcast. I'm extremely honored today to have Coach Roberto Atalla here with us today. He is a 6th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. He started the Rio Grappling Club, which we're affiliated to. He's my coach's coach. He's a former world champion in various levels of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Pan-African champion. It's a huge honor to have you. Is that correct?
No.
Pan-American champion.
I was actually silver in Pan-Americans, but I was European champion without being European a few times. I got the first place in Europe in 2007 in Portugal, and at the Masters 1, and then again in Rome in 2017 without gi, and in 2018 in Barcelona, the Masters European, Masters Europe, I also got gold on that tournament. That was my last competition.
Okay, and when did you start? When was your first competition? When did you start?
My first competition was in 1990.
1990?
990.
Wow.
1990.
But that's the year you started, I think.
Yes, that's the year I started. After 5 months of Jiu-Jitsu, we had like 2 competitions in a row, and I won both as a white belt. And in Rio at that time, it was very small, the white belt competition. We didn't have huge ones, so they were very small competitions. As a white belt, first competition, I had actually 1 match, and the second one, it was indoors.
Yeah, in-house. Yeah.
In-house comp, and I had 7 matches, and I submit everyone, and then I got my blue belt with 6 months of Jiu-Jitsu.
Wow.
Actually.
Jeepers. I just got mine. I've been doing 18 months, so that's sick. Wow, fantastic.
Yes, but then I took another 4.5 years in the blue belt before moving to the purple. So
really,
yes.
What was the reason for that? Was it just
because I wanted, like, my coaches would want me to compete more, and I would like to compete more and become. My goal was to become the best blue belt in my division before moving to the purple. If it makes any sense.
Yes, of course. So you started in 1990. What were you? Okay, I know you travel the world now, going gym to gym, but what were you doing before 1990, and what made you want to start doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, I was very young at the time, and I was going to university, and before Jiu-Jitsu, I did 2 years of capoeira. And I like the striking martial arts, but I started to see the grappling as a more effective option. And a friend of mine started Jiu-Jitsu. He was also into capoeira. And I moved to Rio de Janeiro because before I was in a smaller town that had no Jiu-Jitsu whatsoever at the time. And I moved to my father's house to go to university, and I started training Jiu-Jitsu at the same time. I was 19, and this was... I was 18 when I started. And then I turned 19. I already was training Jiu-Jitsu. I was already a blue belt when I turned 19 years old.
Wow. And what was the Jiu-Jitsu scene like back then? Because obviously now Jiu-Jitsu is a very mainstream sport, but this is 33 years ago. So what was it like at the time?
Look, it was a lot smaller. The level in Rio de Janeiro was amazing at the time. Some of the best coaches that are spread throughout the world nowadays, a lot of them came from that generation that was before my generation. So we had like great inspiration and motivation from the guys that were a little bit older than us, because there was already some nice competitions, but we didn't have the big events yet, and the really good gyms were just a few. And mostly they were in Rio de Janeiro. We had some groups in Manaus, some groups in São Paulo, but the core of Jiu-Jitsu at the time was Rio de Janeiro. And what can I say more about the time? It was more roots, really, because there was no advantage. You need to really make points at least to win a match, or else you would go to the judge's decision. And to be honest, back then it was a total shit show, because refs were always give points to the guys in their gym, forget about the guys from the other gym. So sometimes you would go to a match and if you don't submit, you're not going to win because the referee is my opponent's coach. And that was kind of the way it was back then, you know.
And who did you start with? Who was your first coach, or who was it
My
affiliated
yeah,
to?
my first group was Gracie Barra. It was called actually Barra Gracie, and the head coach was Carlos Gracie Jr. and there was some other coaches there, but on my first year, I mostly learned from not from the coaches but from the brown and purple belts, because the way they structure the class in Brazil there, the group classes back then, it was you would come, do a lot of warm up, learn one technique, and go row. And then next day another totally different technique. And maybe if you have a month of jiu-jitsu, you will learn some advanced stuff. So you really needed help from your friends because there was no structure. And like sometimes, so as long as Carlos Gracie Jr. was the main coach at the time, I learned from Gordo, from Hélio Soneca Moreira, from Draculino, from Soca. Those were the guys, and the Duda. There was some guys that was blue, purple, brown belts when I was white belt. Those guys helped me a lot more than the coaches. Until I went to America, I trained 3 months with Rickson, and he was teaching the classes himself, so I learned a lot on that period. And when I come back to Brazil, I start to really go. Renzo didn't have his own gym, but Renzo was teaching in a place with like very small group. And by then, Roger was maybe 12, 13 years old, Roger Gracie. He was coming, watching. His father was one of the black belts that would destroy me at the time. You know, Mauricio Gomes was amazing. And I would go to Renzo to train. I was still training because Renzo was part of the Barra Gracie, but I start to feel like Renzo was my coach. Already as a blue belt, I start to train with him and go to him because he was teaching many more things. So this is the guy that really was my coach all the way to purple brown belt level. But I got my brown belt, he was already in the United States, and Carlos Gracie Jr. was really the same thing, not really caring about his students. So I eventually moved out to train with 2 black belts from Carson Gracie Jr.
Okay. Who were the black belts?
One is very famous, Murilo Bustamante, because he was Pride and UFC champion.
Yeah.
And the other guy was a guy that came from Manaus, Sérgio Souza, my coach, the guy that gave me my black belt, also black belt from Carson Gracie, but because he was involved only with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Outside of Brazil, people don't know him, but from the generation of the guys that were competing in the 80s and early 90s, he was one of the best. For you to have an idea, famous guy Fábio Gurgel, they had like 5 fights between themselves, and Sérgio Souza, my coach, won 3 against Fábio and lost 2.
Wow.
Yeah, but some of them were in a blue belt or purple belt, something like that, you know.
Through the course of
their careers, they had like 5 matches between themselves, and Sérgio Souza had like 3 wins against 2. He also had a win against Jean-Jacques Machado.
Yes, I know, yeah.
And another one against his brother Johnny. So he was very good. He was one of the best competitors from Carson Gracie team.
Did you know at the time, because these are all obviously now famous names in jiu-jitsu, but did you know at the time how special it was to be around these people?
Look, I had an idea because I knew that jiu-jitsu was a special thing that the whole world didn't have an idea of. All those techniques that were training were being developed mostly in Brazil, and people outside of Brazil were practicing only striking mostly, you know, like or grappling without the whole structure that we had, like that had a focus on MMA, on position that can be effective for real fights and also on self-defense. So I knew how special it was, that thing, but the people, I didn't know how good they were until I see the sport growing and so many other black belts coming, and you don't see like the level. If I would say something that I don't know if it makes any sense, but because the sport grew so much over the years, if you look at the best black belts now, they are better than the best black belts 30 years ago, yes. But the average jiu-jitsu player now is a lot worse because it grew so much, and a lot of technique was lost in terms of like a lot of groups don't train properly the basics, and I see people with big gaps in their game, you know, like, and sometimes you see a black belt that doesn't know how to escape a hip, or even another that doesn't know the base of how to escape from the back. They know how all defensive positions, but they cannot defend themselves when they are in bad positions. And sometimes, unfortunately, even in the competition level, because of the rules, some guys give their backs to avoid the 3 points of the guard pass, and they end up being submitted. You know, I see some guys that when they are winning, they are the best. When they are losing, quickly they get submitted, you know. I have like this Brazilian guy that I forgot his name now, that he caused a lot of trouble as well. He had a fight with Felipe Pena one time.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, on one of them. I forgot the name's guy, but
It's not Calval.
not Galvão. He's a newer generation. He's a big, tall guy, that very explosive guy, and he had good fights with a lot of guys, but sometimes he's losing. The guys on the side control of mount, he just taps without even having a submission. He just gives up. You know?
For the pressure.
Yeah, or he just doesn't want to be there when he's losing.
Do you think so I've got two questions, and they're kind of similar, or they go with each other. So have you seen changes in jiu-jitsu now to what's become important? Because there's a big thing been made now about leg locks, and those have come to the fore quite a bit. And I did pose this question to Rico as well, and he said kind of like things go in cycles. But what's your opinion on the style of jiu-jitsu changing from when you started to now? Do you think it's changed much, and there's an emphasis on other things?
Yes, but like it becomes more specialized now, because you see, like, people are either training mostly no-gi or mostly gi, and it's the same sport somehow, but differences. There is small difference that make it like that. For the no-gi guys, it's more attractive to have a lot more leg attacks, you know. And in the gi, it's harder to submit the people with that. No, I'm not even talking about rules that don't allow some of the techniques, but it's also harder to do it with the gi, you know, like to execute some of the techniques, because you need sometimes like a speed that the attrition of the gi and the grips that the other guy controls. So sometimes falling back with the foot is not an option, because the guy has a grip with you, he's gonna follow you, so it's difficult. So some things I see in a different way. What Rico said about things go in circle is right, but it's developing. So it's not a circle, it's like a spiral. People go back to the same things and they improve on those things that people were doing. So there was a period in the 90s in Brazil that we had some groups attacking a lot the legs as well. And people start to learn how to defend those things, and then they stop doing it, and nowadays it's coming back. But now there is more technique involved, because you have specifically John Danaher studying the Japanese guys and fixing some of what he perceives as problems in the leg lock game, and now everybody's attacking. But then in a few years, everybody's gonna learn how to defend it, and they're gonna focus on something else. But then the whole game progresses because you add more details. And I don't believe in like old school against new school. I believe that is effective techniques will survive the test of the time, you know, and good techniques will be around for hundreds of years, and bad techniques will disappear. Yes. And sometimes the funny thing about jiu-jitsu is sometimes a bad technique, if you train a million times, you can make it good for you. You know? Yes.
And so back to when you started, what was your sort of philosophy and way to get better at jiu-jitsu, and what were your goals basically when you were starting? Was it just to be the best, like you said, the best at each belt, or was it to say I want to get to black belt as quickly as possible, or
no? I don't want holes? Look, in Brazil, it's even like who say so different the mentality in Brazil that nowadays, of course, change a bit, but like people don't want their belts. They want, because they want to stay longer, so they have a chance to win in their respective belts before they move up. So it's like this rush towards belts, I see a lot more outside Brazil than in Brazil.
Right.
Okay. Right. So, but my goal like me, there was a lot of guys in my time that was my goal as a was to be the best blue belt and then eventually get the purple belt and try to be the best purple belt or become one of the best. And only when I felt that I was good enough to compete in the next one, I would move to the next belt and so on. So we wouldn't care, oh, the minimum time you have to the belts, like the federation says, oh, you have to have this time. No, we wanted to stay longer, you know, like, and it was not only me, most of the guys from my generation, they wanted to, because, you know, like if you grow in a competitive environment, and jiu-jitsu without competitions for me is a different sport, you know, like I really needed that for motivation. I wanted to compete next weekend or next month, so that's what pushed me to go train every day and go to the gym as well. You know, it was like the thing, like the competition motivated, because I started to win more than losing, and I like that feeling, and I wanted to have it more. And not only that, you start to interact in your group, and people show you more respect because you're doing well in the gym and you are winning the competition, you are part of the team. Like those things go together. So to feel part of accepted in the group, you wanted to be good in competition. So this was part of my goals. Eventually the first goal was to be good enough to survive others, you know, like that was my first thing, because first months was difficult for me. I didn't have motor skills, so I had to start acquiring those motor skills in jiu-jitsu, you know. And once I start to become good enough and start to win competition, my goal was always that, win the next big competition, you know. And it was be like the next one again, and then the next one. And once you win everything in the purple, now now it's time to go
Ready
to the
for brown belt.
and then start all over again, you know.
Right. One step at a time in each belt, right? And then how long was it exactly till you got your black belt?
Like around 8 years to 8.5, something like this, yes.
Wow. And that was
98.
98.
It was end of 98. And I started beginning of 90. So it was 8 years, almost 9. Yeah.
Wow. And once you get to black belt, there's I've heard to get to black belt, or once you get to black belt, there's a responsibility to give back, right? So
no, I never saw it like that, you know, because I was giving back to the sport since a blue belt, because I was organizing competition, I was reffing, I was teaching other people that come with less skills than me. I went back to my hometown to teach because there was no jiu-jitsu schools, you know, like there. So I started the first jiu-jitsu school in my city. So if you go to my city nowadays, all the guys that train jiu-jitsu there at some point, they were my students back in the day, you know, like.
Yeah. And then, so when did you leave Brazil and decide that you wanted to start Rio Grappling Club?
It's 2003.
2003. You started in Europe, right?
Yes, in London.
In London. What prompted you to start Rio Grappling Club?
Well, first of all, when I made my transition from Bara Gracie to the team, that this team was those two coaches, Murilo and Sergio, they had a team together called Rio Jiu Jitsu Club. Okay, and Rio Jiu Jitsu Club at the time, when I was a brown belt and moved to them, had all the best browns and purples in the competition, especially in the light, middle, and middle heavyweight, you know, and the heavy one as well. Guys came from many different parts of Brazil, and they were training with us. Zé Marius Perry would bring his guys from south of Brazil. There was like great competitors as well, because Marius Perry was amazing competitor, so he had like a group of really good students. He would bring from south of Brazil to train before the main competitions to Rio. And in our gym would come Minotauro. I remember when Minotauro, as a brown belt, came first to the gym to train, and nobody knew him in Rio. And then he goes to a competition there as a brown belt, and he destroys the guys, you know. Like he get Rodrigo Comprido, that was one of the amazing guys. He just submit Rodrigo, like Rodrigo was nobody, you know, like it was crazy, you know. Yes, like, no, Minotauro was like fantastic. What a guy, really. And guys would come, pop from different parts of Brazil. So when I joined Murilo and Sergio, they had this called Rio Jiu Jitsu Club, and it was amazing. But then at some point they broke up between those two, And many coaches from Carson Gracie tried to together make a team called Carson Gracie team, while Carson Gracie Senior was in the United States. Okay, so they put everybody together, everybody was training together, I was still there in this group, and then Carson Gracie came from America and had like a money dispute with some of his students because those guys were going to ADCC. Okay, and in this all fallout they had was in the period that I torn my knee ligaments. So I was surgery, and there was big politics in Brazil. You had to choose sides, and I didn't want to choose sides because I had friends on both sides. You know, I got my black belt from Sergio, but Murilo was also my friend. I didn't want like to antagonize anybody, and like I had to choose between 3 different teams. And if I choose one of those 3, the other 2, the guys from the other 2 will be not happy with me. And at some point, I decided I'm not going to choose anything, let my knee heal. But once my knee healed and I moved to London, then I had a problem because I found a place to teach inside the University of London, but I had to create a grappling society. Okay, to like all the paperwork. So I had to create my club. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to choose between those 3 clubs in Brazil. I'm going to start my own team now because I'm far away from those politics and I don't want to get contaminated by those politics because I like everybody on those 3 teams. I like the people that were training with Sergio. I like the guys training with Murilo that became the Brazilian top team. And I like the guys from Carson Gracie as well. They were all my friends. We used to be training together before my knee operation. And I say, man, you know what? Now is a new period in my life. I'm going to start mostly teaching. This is going to be my focus. So let's make our own team. And I didn't have a name for this team initially in 2003, but I had to create the Grappling Society. At some point, I went back to Brazil. And when Murilo and Sergio split, Murilo had the right to the name Rio Jiu Jitsu Club. Okay. So I went to Murilo to ask him if he could sell me that name. Actually, I didn't want to use it to copy or use it for free. But he asked me a week to give me an answer, and then he wrote back to me because we met in person, but I wanted to explain my ideas that I didn't want to get involved. And he said to me that he would like to keep the name because the things were funny in the Brazilian top team between him and his partners. They eventually split up as well, but he kept the name. So he never used back the Rio Jiu Jitsu Club, but he asked me not to use the Rio Jiu Jitsu Club. He didn't want to sell to me. So I decided to start Rio Grappling Club because I was in London, I had a grappling society and I needed a name for that. So that's the whole origin of the name Rio Grappling Club, and the roots was because this was such a great period of my life of training with such amazing guys. I learned so much as a brown belt and as a black belt, you know, like I wanted to make my team somehow a tribute to that team that doesn't exist anymore.
Yes. And how did you go about starting? I mean, finding people. I can't imagine were there a lot of people that wanted to do jiu-jitsu back then? You know, what was your approach back then to try to get people?
Look, when I came to London, there was actually some scene already. Jiu-jitsu was growing, and I made myself seen by visiting some clubs, training with other people. You know, like, and people knew I was teaching in the morning. I was the only guy teaching morning class. No, it's like almost midday classes in London at that time. And the place was very central. So I started to come people from different places. And not only from England, like I start to have Polish students. I get a guy from Lithuania. I get some guys training from other places. I start doing seminars in Scotland, and everything start to build up from that, you know.
Yeah. Sorry, do you want to say something?
No, it's okay.
And what was so you started to spread out from there. What were your next sort of locations? I know you mentioned Scotland, Poland. Where did you go to next?
I remember going to Greece in 2004, Italy 2005, Croatia and Bosnia in 2007, South Africa was 2007. In 2005, I went to the United States as well, back again to the United States. And then I met a guy that brought me to South Africa 2 years later. You know, so it all, and funny thing is, like, the gym that I was teaching in the United States, in upstate New York, was a coach of an American guy that visited me in London.
Wow.
In 2004, he trained with us for, I even remember the guy, we don't have much contact, but he's a black belt, very nice guy, Trevor Sargent, and he was blue belt back then, training with me in London. He came with the wife for some work in London. He stayed like 2 weeks training with us, and we kept in contact. When I visited his coach in America, then there was a guy from South Africa. I made a joke if he was close to Jeffreys Bay. He said he was because he was from your city.
Yeah.
And I say, man, I want to go, and then I ended up here, and
next thing you were in South
after many
Africa.
waves, I came back and back and back and back and.
Nice. So what? How many clubs are there now all over the world? I mean, because so from there, I mean, just in the last weekend alone, just in Rio in South Africa, Rio Grappling, we had 100 odd students at the grading, and that wasn't even probably half, not even a third of the students I think that we have in South Africa.
Yeah, I think maybe half of them or maybe a third of them. Yes, yeah, something around that. Yeah,
And
I'm not sure.
How many clubs are there now total?
We have over 100 clubs, maybe 105 or 106. I'll be honest, I have to count exactly.
And number of students? Roughly?
This I don't know.
Thousands.
I'm so bad in the like this admin, like because each gym does their own admin. We don't have a centralized admin. So we have gyms with 20 people. We have gyms with 5 people. I have gyms with 200 people. It's hard for me to do an average, I can tell you, like, if we look in the map, I'm going to tell you, this gym has roughly 100, 150. We have some big gyms in Croatia. We have some big gyms in Scotland, Poland as well, like with groups. In Florence, in Italy as well, the numbers are quite big. Belgrade in Serbia, the numbers are quite big as well,
And what's the level like in Europe?
Like, this is the most difficult question. What's the level like in Europe? Because, like, if I ask you what's the level like in your gym, because each person has their own level. Let's be honest, in every gym, you're going to find guys on a higher level, others in lower level. Depends how long they've been training, how much they committed, the level of instruction they're exposed to, the level of the partners. But level is an individual thing for me, like I cannot say the overall level, because it's very hard. Everywhere you see good guys, average guys, bad guys. What I can say for you is, like, the places where the sport grows more and you have numbers, you end up having more possibilities of guys above average to come and show. So if you look at that, in Europe, for instance, we got a number of guys coming from Scandinavian countries doing very well in competitions. You still have some. Now we have Adam Warzinski from Poland doing very well, and soon we're going to have a new generation of Polish guys doing very well. But I tell you that every country in Europe that I visited, I've seen good people, and I've seen people like committed to jiu-jitsu. I can tell you in Portugal, in Spain, in Italy. So everywhere there are gyms that people are pushing hard, and you're gonna get some guys on the highest level. But you're gonna, on the same gym, you're gonna somebody that just started or training for a few years, but once a week, and they like don't really commit to this. So, like, I don't know. Level is a funny thing to talk about.
Thing. Yeah. Because the reason I ask is, is like there's obviously famous countries, like if you watch ADCC, so obviously Brazil always had, that's where Brazilian Jiu Jitsu started. So people would consider Brazil high level, highest level. The US, because they've got a lot of competitors. South Africa, I've seen, because we've got some local competitions, and obviously through the years the level will grow. It's a natural progression. But with South Africa, we don't see that many people going to these international events.
Yeah, but it's so more difficult. Think about that. Most of those competitions that you're talking about, they're running in America, even more than in Brazil nowadays. But so the Brazilians, sometimes they don't have a pass or a visa to go to America. It's very difficult. For you South Africans, it's also very hard to travel abroad because you're far away. So it's more isolation. So it's more difficult to get a competitive career when you have just local competitions. Then you go to places like in Brazil, and you have like you can go to BJJ competitions every weekend with a high level. So I think like it's unfair to even compare this. Like you have to have a lot more growth in the sport this side. and still because of the distance, it's gonna take long to build up. But I believe every country has the potential to have great grapplers. It's no secrets in grappling. It's about like commitment, a very good coach, and a very good group of partners. I think, like.
Yeah, makes sense. Because I was going to ask, what it would take for South Africa, because we've got good grapplers here. Then obviously there's a few hurdles now that you mentioned, but I was going to ask, what would it take for the guys to get up there? Do you think it would take people going and being based in the US for a while and getting on the scene, getting their name out there? Or, what would it take to have South Africans regularly going?
Yes, you see, there's even a guy now, Luke Griffith.
Yeah.
Luke was training as a kid with Bobby Karagianidis. His father and uncle are still training at Bobby's. And he was our student until recently, and then he moved to improve his competitive career. He eventually moved to America. I don't know everybody can do this step, because you have financial hurdles. It's not easy to transfer yourself either to Brazil, where you're going to have possibly, depending on what you want, you're going to have even better training partners and people more willing to help you grow than United States, in my opinion, and you're going to spend less money. And it's also closer to travel. Unfortunately, we don't have the direct flights between South Africa and Brazil like we used to have before pandemic, but it still is a possibility for people. Not being able to go abroad, to stay abroad, like it would be very helpful if people could compete abroad on a regular basis, because that exposes you more to see what's going on in the competitions. And if you want to be a good competitor, the more you compete and with the more different people possible, the better for you. You're gonna have more chances to progress your game, and this, I think, is the biggest problem, the biggest hurdle here is the kind of isolation. In Europe, the level eventually is gonna catch up with North America and Brazil, but it's gonna take time also because the culture is different and stuff like that. But the people who are committed, you're gonna have good athletes in the future from everywhere. Like you see from judo nowadays, you get a guy from Mongolia, another guy from Australia, another one from France. There's still some Japanese kicking asses, but they don't totally dominate the sport anymore because everybody can learn. And I think jiu-jitsu is actually easier than judo.
Is it?
Yeah. It's easier on the body.
Yeah, because you're not getting thrown the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah. Is jiu-jitsu and judo, jiu-jitsu's got its origins from judo, right?
Ah, man, like I wish I could go in time and check exactly because you hear so many different stories. Like, I would say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo both came from the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, but I'm not sure how this evolution came, and because I trained Judo a long time, I think they are the same sport with different rules. So they were the same sport. Because of the rules, they separated. And because the coaches were focused on one side or the other of the same thing, it's also because of this we had this huge separation. But like, I don't know, I wasn't down there, to establish the origin, but it's all jiu-jitsu. I try to see judo is part of jiu-jitsu. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is also a type of jiu-jitsu. The Japanese were calling many different styles jiu-jitsu. So let everything be jiu-jitsu and let jiu-jitsu be everything. Like a friend of mine.
Yes, because I was looking at the history of jiu-jitsu, and obviously everybody knows the Gracie family, but there's is it Mitsuyo Miyeda, I think, is attributed as in some sources as starting jiu-jitsu.
Yes, look, from what I say from many sources I read, Maeda was the most important jiu-jitsu coach that came to Brazil. Not because he taught the Gracie family. They were fundamental to keep the sport growing, but he also had his own gym there running for years, and he made other students that also shared this technique. But because the Japanese immigration in Brazil, there was also another judo and jiu-jitsu coaches that established pretty much at the same time as him that also started groups, and like through the years, some people that were training either jiu-jitsu or judo, but because the judo became Olympic, a lot of those old jiu-jitsu clubs in Brazil became judo clubs. The Gracies kept going with jiu-jitsu, and some others also kept going with jiu-jitsu. But judo took a lot of those early groups that were in jiu-jitsu in Brazil. So jiu-jitsu was not only Maeda, but Maeda was definitely the guy that he ran all over the world testing his skills. After he was a jiu-jitsu player that trained judo, I think 2 to 4 years with Jigoro Kano, but he was calling his sport jiu-jitsu. I heard, I'm not sure, also because for two things, the guys from judo didn't want to be involved in challenges anymore, because Jigoro Kano in the beginning to establish judo, they did challenges against other martial arts in Japan, but they were already established, they didn't want to get involved. And because Maeda had a jiu-jitsu background before his judo, and he traveled around, like he was in England, he learned catch grappling there, and he was challenging people in America as well, you know, like, so all his knowledge became what the Gracies learned from him, and they also probably didn't learn all his knowledge, but partially his knowledge, whatever they could take it, they brought from north of Brazil to Rio de Janeiro, and they started their own club there, what's called Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, I think it's 1925, so it's almost 100 years ago, 98 years ago.
Wow. And who was the guy that fought Helio Gracie that was Japanese Jiu-Jitsu?
He was a judo champion, Masahiko Kimura.
Yes. Okay. And that was also just after, what was that, the early 1920s or 30s, I think?
No, I think this was 50s.
50s, okay, a little bit later.
Yes, it was 50s.
Okay, because those challenges were like the super fights at the time. They were having a lot of those challenges.
Think about that, jiu-jitsu, not jiu-jitsu, MMA didn't exist, but the no-holds combat in Brazil before 58 was more popular than football.
Wow.
They filled a whole gymnasium with this Helio Gracie against Masahiko Kimura challenge in Rio de Janeiro.
Wow.
You know, and Kimura came from Japan. He was smoking his cigars. You know, he was a lot younger, a lot stronger than Helio. And it looks like that he was taking it easy even, you know, because Helio was already an old man, a lot smaller than, but he has beaten some Japanese before, so like this Japanese came exactly like, you have to beat him or something. And he was the judo champion of the time, or one of the judo champions at the time. And it was an amazing story about Kimura, you know, like as well.
Yes. I saw a picture of you and Helio Gracie on when I think, I can't remember, it was Instagram or on Google. How well did you know Helio Gracie and all the other Gracies in the Gracie family?
I started training with the Gracie family in the 90s, so I know pretty much, I won't say all of them, but pretty much almost all of them, the ones involved with jiu-jitsu. But I have seen Helio with all their respect, with distance, when I was a blue belt and all the time. So I never met Helio Gracie in person to talk to him, but I have been given that chance because like 6 to 7 months before he died, he was in Barcelona, where Royce Gracie has a house close to Barcelona, and the guy that is the housekeeper trains at my friend's gym in Barcelona. And he told me that Helio was there and invited us to come over. So I had a chance to talk to Royce, because I met Royce briefly before as well, and to come and talk to Helio, to being choked by Helio with Royce's gi, actually, you know.
Yes.
And wearing a black belt that wasn't mine, you know, like, it was funny, actually. It was such a great experience. But you know what surprised me was not even how strong his choke was, because it was working perfectly. He was 95.
Yeah.
But I saw him going. He had a difficult way, a hard way to climb stairs, but you could see his technique, you know. He would like lower his posture and adjust him and going step by step. He would not use the hands on the rails. Now at 95. Man.
Yeah, that's insane longevity, that, because I know he was still rolling deep into his 80s, wasn't he? Or into his early 90s? He was still training, obviously, but
probably lightly, not really hard. You know, like my brother had more access to Helio because he was working with the family in the media part, so he had chances to make many interviews with Helio. And my brother, I have photo of Helio choking me, and my brother has a photo of himself choking my Helio instead. You know, like I didn't have cool. that much.
Yes. And they had, so there's some crazy stories back in the Gracie gyms, that they also had just the open challenge for anybody to walk into the gym and fight them. Did you ever experience that, or were you ever part of any of that?
No, but I saw not the MMA part, but like to talk about the scene in Brazil was very how do you say 1993. We had the first Brazilian Nationals. Okay, so this is 1993, and it was organized in a club in Rio de Janeiro, and we didn't have a national federation. It was the Rio de Janeiro Federation that organized that one. And the head of the Rio de Janeiro Federation was Renzo's Gracie father, Robson Gracie, which is younger brother of Carson Gracie. At some point, one of the final matches in this competition was a purple belt final match, was due to happen with Robson Gracie, the president of the federation, as the referee, and one of his nephews fighting one of Carson Gracie's students. You know, and at that time, Carson told his best black belts to go, invade the area, sit on the mats and not let this match happen, because he wanted to challenge his brother, that his brother could not be the referee for that important match that could even decide the outcome, which team would win the first Brazilian Nationals. You know. So this was very funny, because nowadays nothing like that would happen, but this was agreed by Carson and Carlos Gracie, which is also his brother, younger, but he was the coach of Robson's nephew, that they would meet a week ago in Gracie Barra, in Barra Gracie. At the time was not Gracie Barra, Barra Gracie was the only one gym. They didn't have this McDojo franchise network that they have nowadays all over the world. You don't need to cut that, it's true. They are so sold out for money, you know, except some good guys that are still there. But mostly he's a McDojo, and before it was very, very hardcore gym. And I remember being there on the day that Carson came with Walid Ismail and another student to film, and the guy, his student, to fight for this medal. So it was a jiu-jitsu match that was supposed to happen a week before in the competition. They postponed and made it a challenge match inside the gym. And few of us were allowed to watch this match, and I watched this match. And Carson Gracie's student is called Ray Diogo, I remember his name, and he was fighting Daniel Gracie, who teaches out of Renzo Gracie, Philadelphia nowadays. And Ray Diogo had three times the same amazing sweep that he did against Daniel, and he won by 6 points. And I was watching their live, this challenge match. So this is a very interesting story. When he won, he looked at this poster that was the Tasmanian Devil with the Barra Gracie written. At the time they used without paying the royalties, but they had the Tasmanian Devil, and this guy Ray Diogo look at the thing and screams like Carson Gracie, and it was so like powerful because he just won that match, you know, like it was. I still remember that stuff clearly in my mind. It was amazing challenge, you know. It was jiu-jitsu under the rules at the time, but because of the whole situation around this match was like that was.
Wow. So now it's like a 5-minute match when you do jiu-jitsu in most competitions, but back then were there time limits, and was it the similar sort of rule set that you have now? Or
like I remember when I started, you had 2 points for passing the guard and 3 for the knee ride. And for some reason they realized that it's a lot harder to pass a guard than to put a knee on the stomach of the person after you pass. So they switched that. And I remember also we didn't have advantages. And actually was better without advantages, because I'm totally against the concept of advantages. We don't see that in any sport whatsoever. You don't, if you hit the goal post in football, it's not a half goal. If the goalkeeper puts out the ball, it's also not a half goal. Like in jiu-jitsu, you almost pass the guard, then you have half point. Like not a half point, but you have an advantage. And I don't know, I find it wrong totally. You know, like I find that you reward things that shouldn't be rewarded because it's just too little. You almost pass the guard, you almost swept the guy, and you almost submit, but you didn't submit. So you didn't actually score points against the guy, but you still can win. Okay, I think you should actually, in 90% of the matches, the referee could be able to look at two fighters and in the end of the match say who won clearly, without even counting points or anything. And on those 10% cases, I would be favoring another like another 2 minutes or 3 minutes
overtime,
an overtime with with a golden goal, instead of advantages.
First one to points wins.
Yes,
because jiu-jitsu is as much about defense as it is attack as well. So you might almost get a submission, but the guy defending, right, is just as good defending it than the guy that was going for the attack.
Exactly. I understand that you have to reward the attacks, not the defense, but it's wrong to reward the failed attack. Because if I almost catch your arm, but you defend it, it's a failed attack. I shouldn't be rewarded for a failed attack.
So like when you were showing us last weekend, triangle defense, there's varying stages of triangle defense, and the last defense that you were showing us is when the triangle's on.
Yeah.
And then there was the escape to that. So in this instance, the triangle would be on, it would be almost a submission, but it's the hardest technique. It's the hardest to get out of once it's on, obviously. Yeah. So for you being in that triangle or in that armbar, whatever it is, for you to get out of it once it's on is actually, there should be an advantage almost in your favor, because it's tougher to get out,
It's true, it's
true. And you're not the one failing the submission, but I guess maybe they want to push the action or something like that,
Yeah, but the advantage actually, if you think of it, doesn't push the action, because if before the guy would stall after scoring 2 or 3 points, now he stalls after 2 advantages.
Right.
If the guys are equal in points and you have 1 extra advantage, if you know how to use the time in your favor, you can stall a lot without being punished, and that's it. You can get away most times.
But in ADCC, I think if you stall, they give you negative points, right? So then I guess that's kind of a solution to it.
Yeah, but then in ADCC you have 2 rules. Basically, you have no points, and then after the half of the time, points. And then makes the strategy very funny, and people become strategy dependent to win. I think the ideal way for a DCC would be to either have no points whatsoever or points from the beginning. Because you see the guys have some strategy to either go quickly or just stall until the points are on. So I'd like to think that it's not the best. All the rule sets have flaws, and it's good that we have different ones so people can test themselves in different rule sets, don't get attached to one. But in the end, I don't know. It's not the way I would see grappling competitions. Like the way they have those rules is not the way forward. They should actually move the rules. That competition is the most popular ones, because obviously they put a lot of money on that competition, and it's once every 2 years. That's why it's so much prestige to win that.
Yes. I guess there's no real sort of perfect formula for competitions.
There is no perfect formula. Another thing I would like to see in a DCC is that everywhere has an uniform instead of being able, because nobody does it, but you're allowed to come with a gi if you want to a DCC, or with not totally naked, of course, but you don't need to have shirt, and then you get sweaty. It becomes a lot difficult for the guys to put you down. So maybe you are a good wrestler, you can use a strategy just to get a takedown, stand up again, stall a little bit, and not get taken down, and you win many matches. You don't need to really engage.
I wanted to ask you, while we're on the topic of ADCC and wrestling, how important, obviously we spoke about judo, what emphasis would you place on wrestling in a grappling context? So even if if you're doing jiu-jitsu competitions, you're going to inevitably come against someone that's done judo or wrestling. What emphasis is there, or how important is wrestling for you?
I think if you do gi, wrestling is not less than judo. You should actually learn judo and wrestling if you're doing gi. If you're doing no-gi, then even though a, some judo knowledge would help you, I think it's gonna be more better to focus only on the wrestling. Okay, but wrestling is very good, important part of the sport and should be included in jiu-jitsu classes. If you at least the basics, people should know a lot more wrestling if they want to be good in jiu-jitsu, because it's part of the game as well. You have to know how to take down people, and you need to know how to sprawl, how to defend, how to counter. Even if you're gonna use guillotines or things alien to wrestling, like or kimura attacks, but you still need to understand how the guy's gonna attack you, where he's gonna focus, so you can learn your defenses as well. Even if you wanna do totally like submission counters to the wrestling guys, you still need to understand what they're doing. So it's very important.
And the wrestlers, you'll see a lot of the guys that have a wrestling background that go into jiu-jitsu. It's just the scramble and the top pressure and just the awareness. They're almost already at they are already at a much higher level.
Look, I think like judo guys and wrestlers, when they come to jiu-jitsu, they have a big advantage. But they have one small disadvantage that a lot of them never fix, is that they expose too much their backs. For reasons of the rules, they are rewarded if they expose their backs instead of playing from the guard. So the most difficult thing is to teach a wrestler how to play guard. If a good wrestler learns how to play guard and how to not give his back, he can become awesome in jiu-jitsu. And the same for a judo player, and the problem is some of them, they cannot fix that habit, because they can get away in judo and sometimes even in the jiu-jitsu training in the gym, but then they go to a competition and they get a scarf hold and the guy is gonna end up in their backs.
Yes. I think that was the case with Rico. Rico had a wrestling background, and then he was able to really hone in on playing his guard, right? Or is that how? Because I mean, now obviously, and the years I've seen Rico roll, fight, or whatever, he's good in all positions.
Yes.
He said the same thing about giving the backup as well from wrestling. But can you remember back to when you met Rico? Like, how has he? What was it like when you met him? And then his progression as he was going along.
No, his progression was amazing. But the most, if I can remember one thing, is that when I started doing, like, because he did some privates with me, and at that time I was playing a lot half guard and deep half guard. I still play that. It's one of my games. And he was in the beginning, he was having a lot of trouble. He's struggling with my half guard. But then he asked me to teach him, and after I showed him what I was doing and what to do, and then it was game over to me. Yes.
Yeah.
The weight difference is too big,
Yes. Yeah. You said you met him in what, 2007?
2007, he came to a seminar of mine in Johannesburg. We meet for the weekend, but we start to work together in 2009. I came to Cape Town. He had a gym in his garage, and I was teaching him privates at Camps Bay, in another gym of one of his acquaintances here in Cape Town. But we were also training at his garage, and then I come back in 2010, and then later he opened his gym in Peru, and then he moved up to reps, and we start doing the camps here. It's been a long time, yes.
So you've been coming back every single year since
yes,
then, roughly?
Since 2007, I came once a year, but in 2009, I came twice, because one time I came to organize the Abu Dhabi trials. I brought to Johannesburg the first one, and I brought medals from Brazil. It was a mess to organize that stuff, but I promised to the friend that was in Abu Dhabi to do that. So I did that first one, so I had to come twice. It was was a pleasure, but I came such a short trip to that time to South Africa, just stay like a week in Johannesburg, 5 days in Johannesburg and back to Brazil. But then every year I came once, and then in 2020 that was closed because of COVID, and now I was coming in November and I had to postpone because I was waiting for my European visa to come through, and then I came now in January.
Are you moving to Europe, right? Or where are you based?
I'm between Barcelona and Wrocław in Poland, but mostly I'm gonna be in Barcelona.
In Barcelona, okay. And how does your travel schedule look like throughout the year? Do you go regularly to all the clubs, or?
Well, because of I was going to pretty much almost every country every year. I tried to, for that reason. Unless there's like very small. Sometimes if the group is too small, I could skip. But it was a pleasure for me to go to those places. But now, there came the pandemic. I had 2 years without being able to travel outside of Brazil. Like it was hard really to travel. You had to have justifications. The gyms were empty. So I came back to travel into last year in 2022 in March, and I went to Europe for 2 months, and I decided that I should move back to Europe and not stay in Brazil. So I'm fixing the whole thing. So I don't have an idea. My schedule is gonna change totally from this year. But the only thing I know for sure is November, December, I'm going to come again to South Africa.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And what do you do otherwise, besides jiu-jitsu? I know you do a little bit of surfing, kite surfing, windsurfing, or kite surfing, windsurfing.
Kite surfing and paddle surfing. No windsurfing.
No windsurfing,
yeah.
Okay. And yeah, what else are you doing in your spare time? I mean, what do you enjoy to do?
Man,
I know you like to travel.
I like cooking. I like gardening. I have beautiful garden back in Brazil, and I miss it as well. Like yes, and like I don't know. I like a simple life. I'm a simple guy. I don't like my hobbies are related to sports. Like I like to learn new things. I like to learn languages and about science as well. It's a little bit of many things actually.
I heard you speaking a couple of different languages. Like last night, you speaking a little bit of Italian, and I think with Alex, you're speaking a little bit of Bulgarian.
I don't speak Bulgarian. I can understand few words though.
Where did you? Is it just from your time traveling, being around a lot of people?
And studying, because if you don't study, you don't learn any language. But I learned Polish, not so well, but I can have a good conversation in Polish language, and because that is very similar to other Slavic language, I can kind of understand if somebody comes from different Slavic countries and speak to me. I can make an idea what they're talking about. Not always.
Yeah, but you can kind of get the gist of it.
Yes.
What's your favorite place to go to?
I have so many, man. But actually, if I say one city is Barcelona, that's why I'm moving to Barcelona. You see, I like the club, but mostly I like the city.
Yes.
I'm not into football that much.
Okay, that's crazy. Huh? Most Brazilians like football.
Yeah, I watch it from time to time, but it's not one of my really great hobbies, to be honest.
Yes, yes. And what would you like to see out of jiu-jitsu for the Rio Grappling Club going forward in the next couple of years, and then just for jiu-jitsu in general?
Look, for the jiu-jitsu in general, I think the path forward would be, I don't know if being Olympic sport would be actually good for jiu-jitsu. Honestly, I've seen some.
Why is that?
I think first, the Olympic structure is all corrupt, like nowadays. And also the idea of competing for your own country sometimes is not only is wrong in many levels, in my opinion, the way I see things, but also you have some sports that you're gonna have only the possibility of one or two people per country. So somebody that has a possibility to get a second passport from a country that has no jiu-jitsu whatsoever might come there to the Olympic Games and have a chance. And the guys from Brazil, US, or places where the level is higher, they're going to have, the trials will be even harder than the competition itself, maybe.
Yeah.
Because they're going to allow only one per weight per country. So this is like a format that I don't see it as much important. And in my opinion, the Olympic concept already is a failed one, but it's just my personal point of view about that. I think jiu-jitsu is going to keep growing. People going to specialize more in gi or no gi, which is great, but I think they are, in the end, the essence is the same, the basics the same, the foundations are the same, and I believe people should train both.
Okay, yeah.
But that's my opinion as well, and I'm glad to have people in my own group that they train only no gi or they train only gi because that's what they prefer. I'm not the owner of the truth or anything. I myself like to train both.
Would you grade somebody that's only done no-gi? Would you be able to, or would you grade them?
Well, my question is, do you wear belts when you are training no-gi?
Of course not.
So why do you need to be graded?
Fair enough. I would just think it would be, if somebody, so in the gi, and correct me if I'm wrong here, so in the gi, it's kind of like it's a way of recognition of your skills, of your knowledge, your time, on the mat, your time with your gym. So there's different reasons why you would get certain belts. And would it not be the same thing?
Yeah.
I know you don't wear it when you compete,
Yeah.
but would you then say to somebody, you're equivalent purple belt?
Let's go back in time. The judo and maybe even the jiu-jitsu traditionally, they only had the belt just to tie their uniforms, and at some point they created a distinction between the beginners and the advanced. So they had white and black belt. That was it. In Japan, there was only white and black belt. And then they exported judo to France and to Europe. They decided that to keep the Westerners interested, they put the belts. And it was effective because a lot of people go after the belts. But I really think, and honestly, gi or no gi, you should never be your quest to get the belt, because once you are at the black belt, you're gonna stay the rest of your life in the black belt. So why hurry this journey, and why focus so much on the belt when the journey is so much precious on what you're like I say, level is an individual thing. So you cannot compare people just because they have the same belt. They have different levels.
Yeah.
And you should worry about improving your level, your skill level. And if you get a color belt or a stripe in your belt as a recognition by your coach, fair enough, it's good for the others. Your belt is only showing to the others roughly where you are in your journey.
Right.
But it shouldn't be important for yourself, your belt.
Yeah, and your end goal and everything. And so you've got, when did you get your 6th degree on your black belt?
Yeah, that's, since you mentioned this, let's talk about degrees. The degrees after you get the black belt, they basically are automatically granted to you upon certain time. So we start with 0 degrees, and then after 3 years as a black belt, if you are active, you're entitled to get your 1st degree. And then another 3 for the 2nd, another 3 for the 3rd. Then it becomes 5 years for the 4th, another 5 years for the 5th, and another 5 years for the 6th. So those belts, if you are respecting the times, they just a reference of how long you are a black belt. It also doesn't show your level. So I got my 6th degree officially from the IBJJF because I have 24 years as a black belt, and I was competing back in '98. So, and I've been active throughout these years mostly, and they recognize this, and they give me the 6 degrees. You have people around the world that are wearing those stripes because they had the time, and some others that just like their coaches given then, but they didn't have the time, and then this is wrong. I would say they are fake somehow, because you can be amazing, you can be even like 10 times better than me, but if you put your stripes before due time, like you're faking something. So it's not important for me, those stripes, but also, like I say, it's important for the others. They see, oh, this guy has 6 degrees. It means like he's been black belt for a long time. Doesn't mean I'm good. Black belt. There can be a black belt with like 6 months of black belt that can be more knowledgeable than me. It's possible, of course.
And so is coral the next? So how do the belts work after black? Is it a coral belt next at 7th degree?
Yes, the 7th degree becomes a coral belt in 7 years' time now, should be. And another 7 years, you get the 8th degree, which used to be coral, and some guys like Rickson are still using the coral, and the federation changed to red and white.
I was going to ask you the difference between the two, the black and white, red and white.
Look, it used to be 7 degree black and red, 8 degree black and red. Okay? And without changing the times, they changed the color of the 8 degree black. The coral became this thing, which they copy from Judo and other European Jiu Jitsu, other arts were doing. while the coral one, the black and red, you only find in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So in my opinion, they shouldn't have added this red and white. And because I believe in that, if I'm alive and be awarded the red and white, I'm gonna just put a stripe on my red and black. I'm not gonna go to that belt.
Yes.
If I'm alive in 14 years time, you know, like it's
Yes.
long time, you know,
Yeah.
like from now on. And if I'm still active in jiu-jitsu, because I don't want a belt if I'm not training anymore. You know?
Okay.
If I'm not at least teaching anymore,
Yes.
I don't want a belt just to show the
have
guys,
it.
oh, look, that I have it.
Yes. And then ninth degree is a red belt, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then 10th degree is reserved for
For the
founders.
The founders.
The founders. Okay. How many red belts are there in the world now? Do you know roughly? It's because it's a very. I saw a thing that said if you were a black belt at 19, the earliest you could get a red belt was at 67, just for the amount of time. Does that sound accurate?
Probably. I don't know. I have to make the maths because I don't know if it's 9 or 10 years from the 8 to the 9.
Okay.
But
so
like let's say let's make from the 6th.
Okay.
Which is easier for us. 19 plus 24 means you have
43.
to be 43 at 43
Sixth
to be
stripe.
a 6th degree. A 6th stripe is gonna be at 43, and then at 50, the earliest you're gonna get the coral. So if you're gonna be in the coral another 14 years, no, hold on. You get the coral, and then you have another 7 to get
10.
7. So
yeah, 67. So 50 plus 7, 57 plus 10.
57, and then should be at 67. The earliest you
67.
can get is 67. And I didn't start that young.
Yeah.
As you know, I was 18, so I don't think
Yours
I'm gonna
is 75.
get.
That's your age. Do you think I mean, jiu-jitsu is one of those things you can do, and the longevity is insane. I mean, do you think you'll be doing it at 75 still, teaching?
If I'm still alive, I don't think I will be around, you know,
Why not?
teaching. I don't know. I'd like to think I'm gonna do my more like softer sports. I'll be swimming, doing something in the ocean. I'm probably gonna be like, I don't know, really, like
Traveling and surfing.
Like no, I'm not gonna be traveling that much at 75. Let's hope I get to 75 and we have another podcast.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll be probably like making assumptions now that I have no clue, you know.
Yeah, not gonna plan too
I
much
cannot
ahead.
forecast the future, even for myself, no.
And surfing, I want to ask you a little bit about the surfing. What have you surfed some famous spots at all, or do you do shortboard, longboard? What do you do?
I shortboard. I surfed in Haleiwa. I surfed in Rocky Point in Hawaii. I surfed in Laniakea.
Pipeline?
No pipeline. I was the beginning of the season. I wouldn't surf pipeline, I'll be honest with you. My level is not that high to be surfing pipeline. But I would go maybe to smaller Waimea, maybe. I would see. I would have to see if I had another season in Hawaii. But I had only one very short season in Hawaii and was mostly teaching jiu-jitsu, but I had the chance to surf on those spots. I was in Jeffreys Bay here a few times. I surfed in... I don't remember, it's a very funny name of close to Sydney. Like there was a famous
Bells Beach.
No, Bells Beach is more down to Melbourne area, but there was a famous place it's close to Kira Point, but I don't remember the name of. It was a place in because I remember, and I was paddling out and I see Marco Quilupo paddling on my wave, so I let him go, you know.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So you surf quite high level then, or you know, like in these are famous spots and these are big spots.
I'm decent enough to not be like
in trouble
in some places, unless there's very big, then I stay out.
And you were saying you want to look at Skeleton Coast in Namibia soon as well. Yeah. Let me know, because I want to go. I used to bodyboard. I would probably never ever be able to go to some of these spots you speak about as well. But I was at a decent level, and I've also I said to my wife, I was like, every single time I've never got the chance to actually go to Skeleton Coast, because that wave is just crazy. I mean, 2-3 minute long barrels is something that's unheard of.
Yeah, but
anywhere.
if you can hide yourself for a few seconds, you're gonna be happy already. You know,
Yeah,
like you
that's
don't need
true.
to do the
all the way down the
all
beach.
the way down the beach.
Yeah.
Maybe you fall there down in the barrel, but it's still fun.
Yeah, but that's open ocean then after that, so it's quite.
Are there sharks there?
So there are, but apparently, okay. So there's a lot of seals. So there's on the point. So how it works is the town's called Walvis Bay, and there's a lagoon in Walvis Bay, and then they've got a peninsula that runs all the way across. They call it Pelican Point. And Pelican Point's basically a seal colony. But if you go just down from Pelican Point, you've got they call it Donkey Bay, Skeleton Coast. So you would think, and we just did a tour now on with a tour guide there, and he said apparently the great white sharks over there, they don't like the seals for some reason. They chase fish and all the other stuff, but so apparently it's not, you're not at too much risk.
All right.
Which because I still found hard to believe.
Yeah, because the color of the water is not so enticing.
Very brown.
It looks like you're not gonna see it.
No. You won't. I mean, even in clear water, you probably won't see it.
Look, if the wind on the right direction, I rather do kite surfing there and try not to fall. You know, like stay above the water to be on the safe side.
Yes. The nice thing is there you can do it in the lagoon. So you're much more sheltered there. In front of my wife's parents' place as well. Like they look out onto the lagoon, and then you can see everybody kite surfing and windsurfing that side. So yeah, it's definitely something you should go have a look at. How long are you still in South Africa for? That's
I have another. Today's Friday. I have another 6 days in Cape Town, and then I have 10 days in Johannesburg.
10 days in Johannesburg. Okay. Yeah. So you're gonna still do some sightseeing and things like that, get some surfing done.
This side I'm gonna kite hopefully Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday if the wind's alright.
Mm-hmm.
I have friends there in Big Bay gonna let me use their gear because I didn't bring any.
Yeah, it's fun. We go there often to go see people going kite surfing and windsurfing that side. I've got some questions from some I asked people to send in some questions ahead of time. So these are some fan questions. We'll do 3 if that's okay with you. Let's get these here quickly. The first question. Okay. The username is Ice-T Bear, I think. It says, what's the best approach to training for the most optimal outcome? And then he's got, how has the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu training differed across the world? So the first question is, what's the best way to train for the optimal outcome in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
You know, the best way to train. That's very difficult because it's so individual thing as well. And I might not be the best person to say that, you know, but I think the best approach first is that you have a way to go to the gym and try to learn every day, not face the sparring sessions as a death and life situation that you have to win all the time. Actually, I believe that you have to test a lot your techniques and improve your game a lot more by paying attention to what you do. And if you're too much obsessed in winning and losing the training sessions, you're going to miss out a lot of details there. So I think it's a very important thing. But having said that, I think because Jiu-Jitsu is so complex, you have to focus on some parts at periods, and then after you are good enough in that area, you should actually get out of your comfort zone and do something else. And it's very difficult because some people learn, they come to the gym and after 6 months, they have developed amazing guards. Some people are just like that, you know, and they learn few things, but they had the motor skills and their guard becomes amazing. What they should do now is start to train from the top, force themselves out of their comfort zone. And if you want to be really good, you have to actually have a very good defense. And the optimal way to train in this case is do a lot of specific sparring to improve your defense. People starting from your back, from your mouth, from every uncomfortable position. If one lesson I could remember from Rickson Gracie, he said that you should, if you are in uncomfortable positions, because you didn't train enough to be on that position. You should be training from that position as much time enough as you need to be comfortable from that position. And that means with somebody a lot heavier than you mounting you, or somebody very skilled on your back. And you know, if you don't have the right mindset, you cannot put yourself to those situations, and so you're gonna learn less. That's my view on that. And the second part of this, he asked about
how does training differ in the different parts of the world?
You know, like not really much, but one thing I could say is that like sometimes I show a technique in most places, and if you leave these people 5 minutes alone, they already start talking and stop training. You show a nice technique or even some basic stuff, a drill that they should do, and if you don't give them time, and the people after a while you see that the pars are stopped. And one thing, that's why I many years ago I was in England and I moved to Poland, and I spent 3 years there, and that's why I believe the potential of those guys there, because over there I teach a position, I can leave the room and stay half an hour out, and I come back, they still train in that position. That's what differs. Some places people are more committed. In general,
and
the
the
group,
mindset
their
different.
mindset is better because they want to train, and they're not afraid of training more and training hard, you know, like.
Yes. Okay. So more of a mindset thing. Okay. The next.
I hope that satisfies this question.
Yes.
I don't know exactly what he was asking, but that's.
Yeah. So I think the long and
If
short
he's
of it
talking
is,
about specific methods, you know, there's not so many ways of training. So, but like.
Eventually everybody sort of does a similar thing, right?
Exactly. You're gonna have to drill technique without resistance. Then you have to do positional sparring. You have to do general sparring. You can do very focused sparring, and you can put yourself in trouble. You can train blinded. What else can you invent? You know, there's like not that much different ways of training. You can change the times of training, where you start from. You know, like the intensity of the trainings. You know, like few variables that you can move around and can have some effect, you know. And if you change them from time to time, not being stuck in just training all the time 5 minutes or 7 minutes or 10 minutes, you know, vary the times as well. The starting position, things like that are important.
I think maybe if I can ask a follow-up question to that, where does weight training and that kind of thing fit in for you? I mean, in jiu-jitsu in general.
I haven't done enough when I was young, and I regret that, because I think weight training is important, because like jiu-jitsu doesn't prepare us for doing jiu-jitsu. We get a lot of injuries, and if you do some proper weight training, not to become looking good at the mirror or super strong or anything like that, but you have to have a maintenance weight that you prepare your muscles better, and they became stronger to resist the wear and tear that jiu-jitsu brings you.
Which is a lot.
Which is a lot.
Yes. Okay, the next question is from Linda Victor Linda Victor Loving Life. So she says she just wants...
Is she loving life?
Yeah, apparently.
That's the only way.
That's good, yeah. So
yeah, that's good.
She says, okay, I'm translating this one here. So for smaller athletes, what are the best submissions or positions for somebody against a bigger opponent? It's a very specific question. I don't know if there are specific answers, but maybe just a general approach for smaller opponents versus bigger opponents.
Yes, it depends on the weight difference. Sometimes if is a woman, right? So sometimes she might have people who are 50 kilos heavier than her, and in that case there is no good approach. It's like the good approach is to avoid training with people too much heavy for you, because that just bring injuries, you know. Like, it's ideally you can have people 10, 20 kilos heavier than you, sometimes taller than you, but when the difference is too big, is actually very uncomfortable for the smaller person. I don't see a good approach, and because I'm not that smaller person, I'm not a big guy, but I train with people bigger than me, and my approach was always to relax and to try to play, like to keep some distance. Don't let the guy put too much weight on me. With somebody is heavy, I try to either I'm gonna try to play from the top if possible, or if I'm from the bottom, I'm gonna avoid giving the person the possibility to crush me, like try to keep this person inside my guard, keep the distance with the legs, and which submissions work, it really depends against who you're fighting. Like it's such a personal thing, because you depend on what submissions you are good at, and which ones are going to work against that specific person.
And the scenario probably as well.
And regarding the weight of the person as well, because if the difference is too big, nothing can do.
So would you say there is such a thing as too big a difference, when Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, that's good.
Look, if you have two persons with a 50 kilos difference and one knows very well jiu-jitsu, the other one doesn't know jiu-jitsu, I'll bet all my money on the smaller person. But I don't go all in. Actually, I never go all in. But anyways, like I appreciate risk control in everything in life. But in any case, if two people have a similar jiu-jitsu level, always the bigger, stronger will have an advantage.
100%.
There's nothing, you cannot hide from that.
Yeah. Strength and weight make a difference. I know a lot of people say, don't use your strength and don't use your weight, but people don't say don't use your flexibility, don't use your speed.
Man, everything, all those skills are important for a good fighter. If you use weight, is a good thing because jiu-jitsu relies on gravity and you should use a weight. And if you have strength, you should use it. Just don't do it in a stupid way that you get tired in 2 minutes. Some people, what they want to say about not using strength is not to force the strength when the technique is not working.
Right.
And I understand the concept, but like at some point, if you cannot fight without using strength. So it seems like it's a paradox. You have to use strength. It's a fight. But you rely only on strength, you're going to get somebody more technical than you that's going to kick your ass. So I think you have to add everything. You have to add to your technique, which is the basis. To your technique, you're going to add your strength, your agility, your speed, your flexibility. All of this is going to help you better to become a better grappler. So why not use the strength if you have it?
Awesome. A combination of everything. Okay, then the last question was from Donnie Nalfoto. He just said, what's the worst thing about rolling with white belts?
When they're too smelly.
Okay, fair
or
enough.
Very dirty geese.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when the white belt is very, very raw, and they don't have the motor skills that they can hurt you in an accident, because they don't really know what's going on. Then it's very hard. But once the white belt acquires some skills and has 5-6 months of jiu-jitsu, he's already understanding what he's doing, he's not going crazy and wild, I don't see any problem in rolling with white belts. It's fun as well, I can test more things because you can get away because the timing of this white belt is not so precise. You can give your arm and see if that escape works before you try with somebody on a higher level. You can train with white belts and blue belts. You can develop you can be a very high level black belt. And if you put yourself out of the comfort zone, you can develop your jiu-jitsu, improve your defense by training with white belts.
One last question based onto this as well is, if you were learning a new technique, would you test it out on white belts first? Or would you just test it out on whatever training partner there is?
It depends if I have a chance. I don't have a problem with losing a position just because I test something. So I will test if I see that the position fits on that moment. I want to test this and the guy give me the opportunity, I'm gonna do it regardless. Like if it's gonna
if put you in a bad position or not.
If I'm working on something, I want to test the thing as many reactions as possible from different people. So the idea is I'm going to test this with white belts, with blue, with blacks, with everybody, and I'm going to start to see which proper reactions are actually causing me trouble, to see if I find solution for those things,
No, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Teacher Roberto. I really appreciate it.
Welcome.
I think that's all the time we have.